Hello, welcome to AAUW Connections. Today, we're going to be talking about what to me seems like a rather unique program that we're fortunate to have in this area. And the name of the program is the Westwind 4-H Riding for the Handicapped program. And to tell us about it, we have Betty Chandick, who is the volunteer coordinator for the program, and Judy Lookabill, who is the 4-H coordinator. So, with that in mind, why don't we start by just describing the program, because it's relatively new to me and I'd just like to hear more about it.
I'll let you, Betty, go first.
Okay, what we do, we have riding for handicapped children, ages 5 to 19, and we meet twice a week. The children come for an hour ride, so they would come for once a week. So we have two separate classes, and we meet up at Westwind Barn. And the typical class would be we tack the horses, have them all saddled. The children come and we put the children on. We go down to the arena, and a typical lesson would be they'll have a safety check to make sure that all of the equipment is fitting the horse properly and the children. And then they will have exercises so that they will sort of limber the limbs of the horses and the children.
Ah, yes, both play a part here,
yes,
don't
they
they?
do.
Yes,
It's a partnership.
Yes.
Work a little bit to relax them, and then they'll have an actual riding lesson where the children learn to stop, start, turn, and guide the horse as to the best of their ability. And then we typically finish with a fun game like red light, green light, or a race with some little stuffed animals, and then we go back up the hill, dismount, and that's an hour lesson.
For that, okay.
And it's
That's
usually
great.
from 4 to 5.
Oh, in the late afternoon.
In late afternoon after school, yes.
So let's backtrack a little.
Okay.
How did the program get started? When and how?
Well, it started in about 1978. There was a city-owned barn, Westwind Barn, and they were looking for a community outreach.
Okay, and this is the city of the town of Los Altos Hills.
Yes, right. Los Altos Hills, right.
And
the barn was donated, or
the barn was donated. Countess Berryessa had a Hungarian horse farm, and she donated the barn when she disbanded the horse farm. And so the city wanted to do something for community outreach. And the local Horsemen's Association had heard about a riding program back on the East Coast for handicapped children, and they decided to start one at Westwind Barn. They visited the one and only one that they could find in the Bay Area, which was up in Marin County, and in the beginning, the local horsemen would ride their horses over to the barn.
Oh, they came with their own horses.
Right. The local horsemen brought the horses over, and then the riders and the parents brought the riders, and the volunteers showed up. And
well, so that's
over 30 years ago.
Over 30 years, and you've been with the program most of that time, haven't you?
With the program over 30 years.
And I'm just a newbie.
Yes.
I've only been with the program for 5 years.
Oh my goodness!
Yes,
Just
I
a
know.
little Johnny come lately.
Absolutely, yes.
But I understand, and Betty, of course, has more of the history,
Yes.
but I'm not trying to ignore you.
Of course not.
But when you first got started, how did you get the word out? I understand that, you knew you were going to have this program. The local horse, was it just word of mouth, or how?
Well, luckily, the Los Altos Town Crier gave several stories with pictures and built a lot of local interest. And also, once the school district started asking their young high school students to do volunteer work, I would go to various high schools and make a presentation to the young people.
And this was right at the beginning of the program?
No, this was a little bit later when it became more active for the community to ask high school students.
Okay.
But in the beginning, it was basically word of mouth and the town crier.
Yeah. And well, I understand that I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that this is really interesting for me because I'm learning a lot about the early years,
well,
you see.
That's the perfect...
Exactly.
But I understand that one of the schools in Palo Alto was very helpful in providing the students, or
There was a school, Juana Briones, where a lot of the students came from that
The
school.
riders.
The riders.
Yes.
it was the riders, not
Right.
necessarily the
Right.
participants in
Right.
the program.
Right.
Now, the staff, I understand, is all volunteers.
Oh,
is that
yes.
correct?
Oh, yes. All
So
volunteers.
There are no paid administrators or
No.
anything?
No.
No.
That is remarkable for such an extensive program.
Well, you know, when you're committed to something and you really enjoy it, and you feel it's fulfilling a need and a purpose, I think that brings out, you know, volunteers and people who really want to be a part of something that they know they're making life somehow easier or better, or an improvement on how children feel who come to us with a variety of disabilities. So it really it's a wonderful program.
Now, are most of the volunteers instructors? How many administrative jobs are there to be done? Both of you are, obviously.
Well, what we have sort of a core of longtime volunteers that we call sponsors. And we have, say, approximately 15 to 20 longtime volunteers that actually direct the program and keep the program going.
So they do a lot of the administrative.
Right.
And you
right.
have a board of directors as
We
well.
have a board of directors.
Yeah, I'm on the board of directors.
are,
I'm a
okay.
secretary.
Yeah. Okay. So there's the board of directors. Then you have all the volunteers, a number of whom the older,
Right.
who've served longer.
Longer.
I hesitate to say older, who take on the administrative duties.
And you know, various responsibilities, the things that need to be done, managing the barn, the horses, looking after the health of the horses, the well-being of the horses, because that's a huge piece that needs to
yeah.
be taken care of. And we're very fortunate to have had a history of people who've been willing to do this. Betty was one of the first, right?
That's,
Yes, she was.
well, and then, as the name implies, Westwind 4-H riding. So there's the 4-H comes into this. The 4-H clubs come into this picture as well. Correct.
Correct.
Right.
And how did that incident? Were they also part of the program in Marin County that you visited?
Yes,
they
when
were.
when the local horsemen, which Nancy Couperis was the one that started the program and sort of spearheaded the whole thing, and continues to be the main figure that guides the program. But she had heard about the group up in Marin County called Halleck Creek, and that was a 4-H program. So when they went up to observe it, they saw how well it worked. They applied to the 4-H, and it's what's called a spatial project. So we just do the riding program. We don't have a full-fledged 4-H group, but we work very closely with the 4-H. We depend on their support, and we totally enjoy working with them.
What kind of support do they give the program?
Well, the biggest support is we have insurance through the 4-H group.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would,
It's
especially
very
with
important.
something like with
If-
horses and
Absolutely.
handicapped children.
and
yes.
volunteers.
When you're in a
Yes.
large
and,
group situation
Yes.
and it's spread out, that works well. So we work with the 4-H, and then we also work with the city of Los Altos Hills, which has given us the land to build our small 4-H barn on. And so we do have that support from both the city and the 4-H.
So in addition to the Westwind Barn, the big barn that's there, you have a 4-H barn?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's an actual barn?
Yes.
We got some grant money. I would say probably about 10 years or so after we had started. We kept originally the horses were all brought in by the local horsemen, and then
Well, we'll come to that. I didn't mean to cut you off like that, but we'll come to how the horses.
but we needed the barn then as we started
Oh, as you
having
started to
horses.
acquire your own.
And so
And we had our own horses.
there
once
were
there,
about
yeah.
6 groups that gave us the funding, and we built a small barn, and it operates beautifully.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Now let's get back to the volunteers,
Right.
since they're, well,
The heart of the
participants
program.
are the heart of the program,
That's
but
right.
the volunteers.
Exactly. Keep it going.
Yes. if someone wanted to be a volunteer, do they have to have a knowledge of horses? Do they have?
No, they don't, which is very interesting. People assume they have to know
Yeah, I
all
would
about
think so.
horses and so forth. No, we take anyone who has young people. I think the minimum age, Betty, is 14.
Do you have many 14 and 15-year-old?
Yes, we do, as a matter of fact. I don't know, I would say the average age for our volunteers, the volunteers that come to us from schools, that probably would be 15 to 16.
Okay.
But we have some 14-year-olds and some 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds. So, and then of course, then we have the older volunteers, such as myself and Betty,
Or anyone else out
or
there in the
anyone else.
community
That's
who would
right.
like to help.
And the kids come to us and they have an interest in working with young people. Then we do training and we work with them to encourage them to learn how to groom a horse and how to be safe around a horse.
Well, that would be very important.
Very
wouldn't it?
important, very important. So we have in our orientations, we teach them how to be around a horse, horse knowledge, horse sense, I guess you might call it. And of course, you have to know our horses are really special.
I'm
They're
sure.
selected to be the kind of horse and animal that was calm and patient, and some of them a little lazy maybe, but you know, we're interested in that kind of mentally.
But a little better to be a little lazy than
Absolutely,
to be-
absolutely, and they're just wonderful, kind beasts. I
So
would
how
say.
the orientation? How long is that? How much orientation does a volunteer get? One who comes
they
in?
get an hour and a half 3 times a year, right, Betty?
Okay.
4 times a year.
Actually, 4 times a year. We have an orientation right before each new session. And so we have 4 sessions. We run the year round with short breaks in between. We basically follow the school schedule. And before each session, we will have an orientation. And we have a video that gives a good overview of the program so that they can see visually how it works. And then we do a safety talk. We do a hands-on with the horse, so
That's what I was getting.
where they
Yes,
see how to do the
it looks
sidewalking.
like.
So they actually go out
They
and meet the
understand,
horses.
See it.
right? They
Absolutely, yes.
understand what their position is, and then I give an additional orientation to adults.
Adult volunteers.
To the adult
Yes.
volunteers. We sort of separate between youth and adults, and so the adults have an additional orientation that lets them know the responsibility they have for representing the 4-H, because that's actually, they're representing the University of California, they're representing the Department of Agriculture, because the 4-H is funded by the federal government, by the state government, and by the local county government.
Oh, really?
So
Yes.
the adults are the ones that take on that responsibility, that they are actually spokesmen for a very important organization.
Now, you mentioned in passing when we were talking about volunteers, about those volunteers who are called sponsors, and they are the more experienced volunteers.
Yes.
Is that correct?
More experienced volunteers are willing to spend more time out at the barn than just the 2 hours or 1 hour a week that the regular volunteers come for. They usually take on the responsibility of one of the horses in terms of being sure that they're healthy and that they're groomed, that they're taken out regularly.
Okay, so one of those volunteers is responsible for
Yes.
this
Right.
specific horse.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
So do
Because-
they have to come every day?
Oh
I
no,
would
they
think.
don't have to come over day. I'm a sponsor and I go up about 3 times a week.
And are you responsible for one particular
Yes, I
horse?
am.
Well, does the horse need to be worked out or something more than 3 times a week?
Well, yeah, they do. They're in stalls and mentally they need to get out.
So who
like any
does
of
that
us.
on the 3 days the 4 days when you're
Well,
not there?
generally there are 2 or 3 sponsors for each
okay,
horse.
okay.
So the goal would be to get that horse out every day.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
But the other advantage to that is that the volunteer who is the sponsor and who works with that horse then leads that horse in the program. So they know the horse, they understand everything about that horse and can then relate to it better with the rider.
Yes.
So there's a lot of advantages
And
to
the
that.
sidewalkers, remember?
Right.
Yes.
Well, So speaking of the riders,
Yes.
whom we have said are handicapped children, ages, what was the youngest?
5 to 19.
5 to 19. Now, first of all, how old are most of the children in the program, the participants?
Oh, it depends on the session, I would say.
Probably ages 8 to 10 is,
Yes.
is a good average. We have some younger riders and some older riders.
Okay, but the majority
Yes,
probably are in
yes.
that age. So what type of handicaps do they have?
All different kinds. Some, I think, one year when I was working, we had a child with cerebral palsy, and for that particular disability, we had to have a double rider. In other words, that child was not able to sit by themselves with the standard walker, so we had actually a volunteer who was a rider also, and sat behind that student and held him on the horse, double rode. And we have students.
How did that child make out?
Quite well.
Stayed,
yes.
finished the whole
Absolutely.
session?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
They build up a lot of trunk support
Yes.
so that even a child who starts either being ridden double or having two sidewalkers that totally support them, over a period of time, because they're enjoying themselves so much, you will notice that they start gaining trunk
Yes.
support, and the next thing you know, they're sitting a lot straighter.
So that's really
Oh yeah,
at a
it
tremendous advantage for
physiologically,
the
it's a
child.
wonderful thing for children because the motion of the horse, which is back and forth like this, forces the rider to move to accommodate that.
And
the
to
same
do that,
time,
you have to have some muscle control.
And that builds that muscle control. Yes, so it is truly therapeutic.
Oh, yeah.
We've
Now,
also had several blind children.
Yes, we
And
have.
I can remember one young girl that I was working with. She and the pony that she rode became such a bond. We were doing a barrel racing thing one time, and so I told her, I said,
Well,
I'll tell you.
not really barrel racing, but kind of.
It was barrel racing.
Well, okay, Betty.
We were barrel
but at a
racing.
slow pace.
At a slow
pace,
pace. But I told her, I said, okay, when we come up to the barrel, I'll tell you when you're coming close to the barrel. And she says, you don't need to. Sugar will tell me. And
my goodness.
that girl eventually went down below where we had a quarter-mile track at the time, would go flying around that track because
goodness.
she and the pony had bonded. She later went on and took normal riding lessons, and her instructor, she had a microphone, her instructor would sit in the stands and she would participate in horse shows, totally blind
wow.
from birth.
Yeah.
And just because she bonded
That is
with the
just
horses.
amazing. That is
And we've had children with that have been in wheelchairs, and imagine what it must feel like for a person who has always been in a wheelchair looking up at people.
Yes.
You put that child on a horse, and you know what?
Yeah.
They're looking down at people. Just think of the mental.
literally, physically, a
Yes,
new view of the
A
world.
new view of the world. It's really.
And when they learn
Yeah.
to control a 1,000-pound
Yes.
animal, they feel much more control in their
Yes.
life.
They do.
That is just absolutely wonderful.
This is
Now-
why we do this.
Yeah, I can understand it. Now, are all the participants from Los Altos and Los Altos Hills, or can they be from?
Are you talking about the writers?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, they're from all over. We have people from San Jose, Redwood City, Mountain View, Los Altos, all over.
So how many? Now you said they come a session. If a child is enrolled in one session, that session is once a week.
They come once a week for 10 weeks for a normal session.
And how often are sessions given? Do you have sessions going on every day of the week?
No, we have twice a week. So we meet from the normal
you said
thing
from
is from 4 to 5 on Monday and Thursday. And so the children would come either Monday or
Right.
Thursday for a 10-week session. And then sometimes when we have a huge waiting list, sometimes they will rotate out for a session,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
take
was
a
the
break,
next-
Yeah.
and then come back.
That was the next question because you're obviously limited to how many
Horses we have.
Yes, to how many horses,
Right.
as well as how many volunteers,
Exactly.
and so then you have a waiting list. Now the children are allowed to stay with the program. They don't have to just come once and then they're out. So how do you start to accommodate new people?
Well, what we do is we take any physical handicap between the ages of 5 and 19. And so as long as they're interested, they can stay in until they're 19. Now, we do, when we have a waiting list, we will ask students to rotate out.
For a session.
Sometimes it will be that we can say that child is having so much of an impact right now that he needs to stay in. And so sometimes that child will stay in because of the progress that they're making at that time. Other times the parents will say, oh, we're very busy, you know, we would like to take a break.
So it works out.
Exactly.
It works itself out.
And sometimes the older kids, by the time they're 15 or 16, they're ready to probably do either advance in their own horsemanship, and we see some students that do that, or to move on to something else.
Well, and as you said, 8 to 10 is the most common age.
Yes.
So, okay. Now you started to describe. Another question just popped into my mind. What is the role of the parents?
To get them there.
Okay.
To be supportive, and I think the thing that is interesting to me with parents is that there seems to be sometimes a fear of they're there, they want their child to have this experience, but they're uncertain about the relationship of the horse and the student. They have to let go and step back and let us work with them. And I think it's really wonderful to see how parents who come with some anxiety at first begin to realize that the value of what this is doing for their child. Step back, go up in the bleachers and watch, and feel perfectly comfortable. But we want them to be there. Their role is as important as it is in any educational activity.
So they stay for the session.
But one thing that's really beneficial is that the parents are sitting up on the bleachers visiting with other parents.
Yes.
So they get an hour to relax while they're watching their child have fun, and they can talk to other parents.
Yes, and share.
So it's a beneficial.
Well, I can also see where for the children who are participating, they are now in the company of other children with handicaps, so they're not so unusual. Is that?
And they get to know each other, and the horses' names, and Colin is on tango today, and why isn't...
So the child doesn't always ride on the same
For the
horse.
most part, we try to have them on the same horse. Sometimes if the horse has an injury or something, we have to change.
Now, you sort of alluded quick in passing to how you choose the horses. How do the horses come to you?
Well, originally they were local families that had a horse that, say, the child went off to college. They had an older horse. They were looking for a good home, and so they would donate the horse, and we would give it that home that was a wonderful home for the horse. Now, at this point, a lot of families are not keeping riding horses, and so we have occasionally gone out to find the appropriate horse. It turns out we have very, very selective needs.
I would imagine you would.
very.
We need different sizes of horses because a horse that's too tall, the sidewalker can't hold their arm up for a long time. We need horses that can deal with the group situation of having a lot of people and a lot of horses in the arena. So we need a special horse. And sometimes it takes us a long time to find that special horse.
I'm sure. Now, I noticed one of you was talking about a child on a pony. So you have a pony as well. That's is that for the youngest children?
Right. We always try to keep one pony
Yeah.
because we do start with age 5, and the children feel much more secure if they're on that closer to the ground when they're first riding.
Now, you mentioned sidewalkers.
Yes.
What is obviously it has nothing to do with sidewalks, pavement. It has to, I mean, took me a while to figure that out. It's somebody who walks on the side of the horse.
Right, you have the horse and you have the rider. And you have, like, our sponsor who is leading the horse, fully tacked with a bridle and so forth, but there's a lead rope.
And where is that sponsor? In front of the horse?
Right at the head of the horse, right by the head of the horse, leading that horse. On the side, you have generally 2 what we call sidewalkers.
One on each side?
One on each side, so that their job is to be sure that that child is stable and secure in the saddle. Sometimes it will be putting your elbow or your arm up against the leg lightly. Sometimes
leg
all
of
of
the
our
child.
yes, of the child. Sometimes all of our riders wear belts with little loops, and so we have them hang on to the belt, the sidewalker, as they're walking along. And again, it's just keep that child from leaning one to the left or too far to the right, or keep them centered in the saddle. Interestingly enough, the children often advance enough so that our sidewalkers are not actually holding on to them. They're just there.
Then
just in
you're
case.
there. Now you're
Yes.
seeing the real progress
You see the
that
progress.
the child.
Yes.
Now, obviously, you have needs for funds. You're talking about having to buy horses.
Yes.
Well, it turns out that horses eat a lot of hay.
Imagine that. When you say somebody eats like a horse,
And they also, if you have a horse that's injured, the vet bills can be huge.
And they have to be shod.
And they need shoes.
so that's where your
Shoes.
funds
So that's
go.
where our funding goes.
And now, if someone wanted to volunteer to help with funds, what would they do?
Well, we have a website and we have a voicemail phone, and
And I think they're being shown on.
people can
Wonderful.
go
Yes.
into the website or can call on the voicemail and can ask to have somebody contact them. And we are always very pleased to have people that say they would like to come up and observe the program, possibly to to volunteer. We're naturally very happy when people say we'd like to buy some hay for those horses.
Sure.
And so we do have the outreach where if people would like to contact us, they can.
That's great. So, and that's also the way someone would volunteer, I
Yes.
assume, as well.
Yes.
Yes.
So for either one.
Right, they can just leave
Now
their
we just
name.
we just have seconds left, but it must be very gratifying to see the progress that these children make.
When you've got the kids, the horses, and the great outdoors, you have
A
so
winning-
much
A
fun.
winning combination.
combination.
Well, I want to
Absolutely.
thank both of you on behalf of the public for all the work you're doing with these children. It's just wonderful work, and I want to thank all of you for watching AAUW Connections.
Thank you, Marge.